Rick Prime is one of the most dangerous, if not the most dangerous and powerful Ricks in the entire multiverse. From killing our Rick C-137's wife and daughter to becoming Rick C-137's life-defining obsession, buckle up as we dive into the complete story of Rick Prime. So without further ado, let's start at the beginning. Rick Prime wasn't always the multiverse-hopping maniac we know him as. Just like other Ricks, he was married to Diane and had a daughter named Beth. But here's where things get twisted. Their marriage was absolutely horrible. We're talking about a relationship so bad that Rick Prime grew to hate his wife Diane with a passion. And when I say hate, I mean hate. This guy didn't just leave her like a normal person going through a divorce. Oh no, that will be too simple for Rick Prime. Instead, he abandoned her and then decided to kill all the other versions of Diane across every single dimension in the multiverse. Talk about taking a breakup too far. Now, Rick Prime wasn't just sitting around being bitter about his marriage. This guy had big plans. He started working on teleportation technology, thinking he was going to be the first to crack the code. But plot twist, when he finally succeeded, he found out that he was actually the last to invent teleportation.
You know the worst part about inventing teleportation? Suddenly you're able to travel the whole galaxy and the first thing you learn is you're the last guy to invent teleportation.
Imagine working on something for who knows how long, only to find out everyone else already figured it out. That's gotta stink. But Rick Prime wasn't about to let that stop him. If he couldn't be the first with teleportation, he was going to invent something nobody else had. And that's exactly what he did. He became the first Rick to invent interdimensional portal travel, an invention only Rick C-137 managed to crack the code as well. Hold on. Think about how huge this is. Rick Prime literally opened up the multiverse to the Ricks. Before him, they were all stuck in their own dimensions. After him, infinite possibilities, infinite chaos, and infinite ways to mess with people's lives. Once Rick Prime had his portal gun working, he didn't keep it to himself. Nope, this guy went on a recruitment drive, traveling from dimension to dimension, introducing other Ricks to portal technology and the existence of the multiverse. Most Ricks probably jumped at the chance. I mean, who wouldn't want access to infinite realities? But not all of them were interested, and that's where our story gets really dark. But wait, before we continue, if you guys are enjoying this video so far, please don't forget to subscribe to our channel and help us reach our goal of 1,000 subscribers. Alright, continuing. One of the Ricks that Rick Prime approached was our Rick C-137, but Rick C-137 wasn't having it. When Rick Prime showed up with his portal gun and his multiverse sales pitch.
You think it's cool being the smartest man on Earth, but once we give you this technology, you become the smartest thing in every conceivable universe. The infinite Rick. A god. Pass.
Rick C-137 basically told him to take his technology and shove it. He wasn't interested in abandoning his family or exploring other dimensions. Now, Rick Prime was used to other versions of himself being impressed by his genius. So when Rick C-137 acted like he was better than him, Rick Prime took it personally. So what did Rick Prime do? He left Dimension C-137, but not before leaving a little goodbye present. And by a little goodbye present, I mean a bomb that killed Rick C-137's wife Diane and daughter Beth, and seriously wounded Rick C-137 himself. This bombing changed everything for Rick C-137. After getting medical treatment and grieving for his family, he did what any reasonable person would do in a situation. He spent years developing portal gun technology from scratch. Also, he could hunt down Rick Prime and get his revenge. This is where Rick C-137's obsession with Rick Prime really begins. We're talking about a guy who dedicated his entire life to finding one specific Rick in an infinite multiverse. That's like literally trying to find a specific grain of sand on every beach that has ever existed or ever will exist. But Rick C-137 was determined. For years, Rick C-137 searched the multiverse, occasionally clashing with Rick Prime, but never quite catching him. Eventually, Rick C-137 got tired of the endless hunt. After years of searching with no real progress, he gave up on actively hunting Rick Prime and helped broker a peace treaty between different Ricks. This decision led to formation of the Citadel of Ricks, basically a multiversal Rick club where Ricks could hang out and do Rick things without trying to kill each other. But Rick C-137 wasn't done with his revenge plans. Oh no, he was just playing the long game. He found Rick Prime's original dimension, the one he had abandoned, and decided to move in with the family Rick Prime had left behind. His plan was simple: wait for Rick Prime to eventually come home, and then finally get his revenge. It was pretty clever when you think about it. Where else would Rick Prime eventually return to but his own dimension? Meanwhile, Rick Prime was dealing with his own problems. Remember how some Ricks refused his portal gun offer? Well, Rick Prime had a very specific way of dealing with rejection. He killed their Dianes, because apparently if you don't want to join Rick Prime's multiversal club, your wife has to die. But it gets worse. As more and more Ricks started haunting Rick Prime, he decided to solve the problem once and for all. When I said he erased all Diane from the entire multiverse, well, how did he do it? He developed something called the Omega device, a weapon that could completely erase someone from every single reality that exists, and he used this ultimate weapon on every version of Diane across the entire multiverse. Rick Prime literally committed genocide against his own wife across all of reality. Rick Prime wasn't stupid though. He knew that wiping out all the Dianes would make even more Ricks want to hunt him down, so he came up with a defense system. He created multiple decoys of himself and scattered them throughout the multiverse. These weren't just regular decoys either. They were connected to death traps that would kill any Rick who found them. Rick Prime was basically trolling other Ricks on a multiversal scale. Back in Rick Prime's original dimension, Rick C-137 was settling into his new life with the Smith family. The weird thing is, he actually started getting attached to this new Morty. The revenge quest that had defined his entire existence was slowly taking a backseat to his growing relationship with his grandson. This is actually pretty touching when you think about it. Rick C-137 had lost everything and spent years consumed by hatred and revenge. But this new family, especially Morty, was helping him heal. He was finally finding something worth living for. Rick C-137 even ended up leaving that dimension when he accidentally caused an apocalypse. Fast forwards to the events of the Solarics. Rick C-137 accidentally resets all portal travelers back to their home dimensions. This meant that Rick Prime was also sent back to his original dimension, the same dimension where Rick C-137 had been living with the Smith family. Rick C-137 realized this was his chance. Using Morty's DNA, he tracked Rick Prime down to his lair. This was the moment we'd all been waiting for. The first real face-to-face encounter between these two Ricks, since Rick Prime killed Rick C-137's family. But when they got to the lair, they found what looked like Rick Prime in the glass tube, along with a recording with a bunch of killbots. Rick C-137 was ready for the fight of his life, but Morty convinced him to let it go. After all, Rick C-137 now had a new family to worry about.
I don't know him! You're my grandpa, Rick! Rick and Morty, 100 years!
They left, thinking the Rick in the tube was just another decoy. Well, plot twist, it was actually the real Rick Prime, and he had been listening to everything. In one of the most unexpected moments in the series, Jerry Prime actually tried to kill Rick Prime. After Rick Prime ejected himself from his self-destructing lair, he landed on Earth and ran into Jerry. Now Jerry recognized the threat Rick Prime posed, and actually came up with a pretty clever plan.
Because if you hate them too, I could be down for a little team up.
I really don't team up anymore. Managing people, such a headache.
Fatality.
For a brief moment, it looked like Jerry might actually succeed, where Rick C-137 had failed. But Rick Prime had healing abilities, and he wasn't about to let Jerry of all people take him down. He killed Jerry pretty brutally, but you have to give Jerry credit for trying. That took some serious guts. Rick C-137 wasn't giving up though. He salvaged technology from Rick Prime's destroyed hideout and used it to track down his nemesis. By analyzing Killbot software, Rick managed to find all the locations where Rick Prime had left his decoys across the multiverse. This led to Rick bringing Morty into his revenge quest. It was like Rick's obsession was being passed down to the next generation, except Morty was going along with it to help his grandfather rather than being consumed by revenge himself. Now we move on to the final showdown. The final showdown began in Unmoored Chicken, when Rick and Morty teleported several Rick Prime decoys to one location. This got the attention of Evil Morty, who decided to help out with some advice about adjusting scan arrays. They managed to trap one decoy, but when an impatient Morty killed it, the decoy turned out to be a trap that sent them into a prison designed specifically for Ricks who tried to track down Rick Prime. Inside the prison, Rick Prime had set up a battle royale situation where captured Ricks would fight each other, with the winner supposedly getting their Diane back. Of course, this was just another trap. The prize was actually a bomb with Diane's face on it. Rick Prime was literally using the memory of their murdered wives to torment other Ricks. That's next level psychological warfare. Rick C-137 and Evil Morty destroyed the bomb and combined their resources to escape the prison and get into Rick's basement laboratory. Using the remaining fluid from the portal trap, Rick finally managed to track down the real Rick Prime. When Rick C-137 finally arrived at Rick Prime's real Morty lair. He had to fight through various drones and defenses. Rick Prime wasn't making it easy. This was his final stronghold, and it was heavily defended. Rick Prime appeared in the main chamber that housed the Omega device, and he was impressed that dead wife Rick had finally tracked him down. But he couldn't resist getting in a few more insults, calling out Rick C-137 for using Diane's voice for his AI.
I can see why you hate him.
And she sounds like our wife. Like in a up robot way, but that's definitely her voice. You sentimental little fella.
Rick Prime even killed Slow Mobius, Uncle Slow, just to hurt Rick C-137. Rick C-137, Morty, and Evil Morty all teamed up to take down Rick Prime. This was the ultimate showdown, as they were working together to stop the most dangerous Rick in the multiverse. The fight was so intense that both Rick C-137 and Morty got knocked out, leaving Evil Morty to finish the job. In a brilliant tactical move, Evil Morty pretended to be Rick Prime's original grandson. Rick Prime fell for it, allowing Evil Morty to incapacitate him. Evil Morty dragged the defeated Rick Prime into another room. He scanned Rick Prime's mind to download the schematics for the Omega device, while also deleting all of Rick Prime's backup copies. This ensured that Rick Prime couldn't just resurrect himself later. Rick Prime was actually impressed by Evil Morty's ruthlessness, and suggested they become partners. But Evil Morty rejected the offer, and instead dragged Rick C-137 into the room, giving him the free reign to get his revenge. Even facing death, Rick Prime couldn't resist getting in some final psychological shots. He warned Rick C-137 that they should stop Evil Morty while they had the chance, but Rick C-137 was just too focused on finally getting his revenge. As Rick C-137 began beating Rick Prime to death, Rick Prime delivered some of the most psychological warfare we've ever seen in the series. He told Rick that technically Rick didn't have a life without him.
What's your life without me? Let's find out.
That Rick's entire existence had been defined by his obsession with Rick Prime. He pointed out that Rick was living in Prime's house, with Prime's family, surrounded by echoes of Prime's abandoned life. Rick Prime even claimed that Rick C-137 would have become just like him anyway, and would have walked into Prime's garage if Prime hadn't done it first. Rick C-137 finally delivered the killing blow, ending Rick Prime's life. But even after Prime was dead, Rick kept beating the corpse, desperately trying to find some satisfaction from his lifelong revenge quest. When Rick finally emerged from the room, covered in Rick Prime's blood, he had technically won. He had gotten his revenge after decades of obsession. But as Evil Morty pointed out,
How's it feel? Better? No? Exactly the same? Yeah, it always does.
Rick found no closure from killing Rick Prime. Instead of satisfaction, he was left emotionally spiraling, wondering what to do with his life now that his life-defining obsession was gone. Rick Prime's death marked the end of one of the most compelling storylines in Rick and Morty, and probably every cartoon series there ever was. Ooh, guys, this video took me a very long time to make, so if you enjoyed this video, please don't forget to subscribe and help us reach our goal of 1,000 subscribers. It would mean the world to us. Comment down below on what you guys want to see next. Click here to watch our latest Rick and Morty video. Until then, I'll see you guys next time in the next Rick and Morty video.